Okay, so now we are recording this session. So that's going to help every one of you if you want to go back and go over some of the content that we cover this evening. But before we get started, can you just spend 5 minutes to fill out the four questions? Some of you only take 1 minute to do this. Under hello, help me to help you. Can you all see this in the front of your Moodle site? Do you all see that? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so click on that. And so what you're going to be asked are 4 simple questions. Which country are you learning from? I don't want to assume that everyone is in Malaysia. Some of you may be in other countries, which is fine, but I need to appreciate that and the difficulties that that may pose. Okay, which industry that you're in. If you are working in an industry, why did you choose this unit? Maybe someone asked you, maybe someone said this is the best unit ever. I don't know. And what do you expect to learn? Maybe something that is in your own personal goal. Okay, maybe something to do with your career. Maybe something, well, I'm just curious about this topic. So you can write in anything you like, but it helps me to get to know you. So I think that's a great start. So far, I'm just looking at some of the responses in terms of country. Most of you are in Malaysia, that's good. We have 13 responses so far, so if you just can take a minute to just fill out your responses to those questions, that would be wonderful. Okay. And you're all filling that out, that is wonderful. While you're filling that out, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been at Monash University for 3 years. I am the head of accounting and finance department, and you're probably thinking, how does an accounting professor come to teach supply chain management? And there's a long story about that you'll find out during the semester, but that's something I'm passionate about. I have lived in Hong Kong for about 20 years, and I'm so fascinated with the factories and the production of goods in China that it's naturally part of the world's supply chain, and that's my passion. And up until this year, I was going across the border in China. Even when I was in Malaysia, I'd fly back every other month and visit factories in China just to, number one, help them, give them some advice. Sometimes I was giving advice to a buyer that wanted to know whether they could buy from a factory. Often buyers contacted me to do an audit of a factory. Sometimes buyers contacted me for whether they choose one supplier A or supplier B. And in that process, I just enjoyed the whole connecting buyers with suppliers. I enjoyed the pro bono advice I was given to suppliers in helping them become better so they can survive. And my interest just grew naturally. And so it's only natural that I get to teach a unit like this, because then I can use my expertise gained through probably the last decade of working with suppliers in China. So that's a little bit about me, and you'll find out more from week to week. But the big thing you need to know is I think it was only last week I was on a call with a a buyer in London who had a factory in China, and they're importing LED horticultural lights for sales in Europe, and they wanted advice on how best to manage the factory and to help improve their quality problems. So, and that's something that we're working with this client in London, and that's an assignment I've been doing. That's less than 1 week old. So little things like that is what I get very excited about. But of course, I'm an accounting professor, and you're probably wondering, well, okay, so what's accounting got to do with supply chain? I think the big thing you need to know is that my passion is in management accounting, and basically that's really operations management and how we measure things in an organization, how we measure things in a factory, and how we can improve the efficiency and the optimization of operations in an organization or in supply chain. So that's a bit of my background, and happy to share more as we go through the semester. So we have 30 of you that have filled out the questionnaire so far. We have, how many do we have on the course so far? We have 37. So if you've just come in, what we are doing is going to the Moodle site, and we go into the link, hello, help me to help you. And there are 4 questions I'm just asking you to fill in. That is, in which country you are learning from, which industry do you currently work, why did you choose this unit, and what do you expect to learn from this unit? So I think this is a good start. So I'm just getting to know you a little bit more, and then I can appeal to your interest as we go through various examples. Just one more thing before we go further. I just want to introduce to you my assistant, and that is Ginny Wong. So Ginny will be joining us on all of the calls, and from time to time will help me in terms of managing the some of the accessible tasks in the unit.
Oh, hi everyone.
Thank you, Ginny, for introducing yourself. Yeah, and Ginny, which school are you in, Ginny?
I'm from School of Engineering.
And what is your favorite activity? Playing with robots, I hear. Is that right?
Kind of.
Designing robots, I think is very exciting. Yes. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now is go into the PowerPoint slides. Now, at the moment, we have on the call, how many do we have on the call, Ginny? We're at 37, minus myself and you, that's 35. That's a good start. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, and we've had 33 answer that question. Actually, we have someone from China on the call, which is great. And I'm so glad that you can connect and get access, have the bandwidth to access this module. We have 2 people from China. We have 1 from Indonesia, learning 3 in Indonesia. So I think that's wonderful that we're all over the place. I think the good news is that, and 1 from the Maldives. So if you're from the Maldives, could you put your hand up? Anyone here? No? Yes? Okay. So Maldives, I think you're 4 hours behind, correct? About that, okay? And for China, Indonesia, I think we're more or less in the same time zone. So I think that's good news that most of us are in the Malaysia time zone. And if there's any problems with you're in a different time zone from Maldives, just let me know from time to time so we can accommodate any challenges that you might be having. If anything, we're going to hit midnight 4 hours before you do. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share another screen now. So let me just move this meeting across. Okay, so welcome everyone. What I'm going to do now, it's very important that we have some participation, and we'll talk about some of the assessment. But for now, we just want to warm you up. From time to time, we would like you to speak, and what's very important is, if you don't mind, to use a video. I think it'd be really good for the whole class to use a video. Maybe you have bandwidth issues, and in that case, maybe you just limit your video to when you are speaking, but it's okay. I would prefer if you try and use a video when you can, and at least when you're speaking anyway. So I think that would be great for everyone in the class. What do you think? Do I have hands on that? Yes or no?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we have Sarah. Sarah's on video. So Sarah, well done. You're a very brave girl, so thank you. Okay, but don't worry, everyone will be on video before we finish tonight. So you don't know what I'm going to do. So let's see. All right, there's my background. You've seen that. You've managed to, do you all have access to the PowerPoint slides? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, good, good, good. Okay, great. All right. So there's my background, and you can find out more about that. I've just asked all of you to tell me where you're learning from, which industry you currently work, and why did you choose this unit, and what do you expect to learn from this unit. So as I can see, immediately I know that most of you are in Malaysia. However, some of you are in Indonesia, some of you are in China, some of you, and Maldives. So I think that is very, very special. So thank you for getting in touch from those countries. Okay, so global supply chain management. Is this a normal textbook course? No, it is not. This course has been totally designed by myself based on my own work with global sources and China over the last 10 years. Believe it or not, I did not copy any chapters from other textbooks. I've basically developed a lot of the frameworks from my own interviews with suppliers, large buyers, including Apple, HTC, etc. So what I do, as I said right at the beginning, I go into factories and I help them improve their strategy, I help them improve their operations, and also I give advice to buyers about how buyers can help suppliers as well. Because the typical challenge in supply chain is that buyers think that they can manage suppliers from a distance, and that rarely ever works out well in the long term. So that's what I do, and living in Hong Kong for nearly 20 years now means that I've been right in the middle of all of the big changes that have occurred in the global supply chains over the last decade. Okay, let's just go on to the next part, learning objectives and assessment. I'm going to show you three documents here, and these three documents are in Moodle. I just want to make you aware of them. The first is the topic schedule. Ginny, is that showing up, or do I need to refresh the screen share?
I'm not sure that it's showing up, Professor.
Okay.
I don't think so. Let
me just show it again. Okay.
Yeah, it's showing up.
All right, good. Love it. Okay, note it's showing. Great. Let me just get. Good. Okay, so all of you know that there are certain topics that we're going to cover, but notice a few ideas. Number one, in week 4, there's a sourcing quotation that you will need to deliver. In week 8, after the midterm break, there will be a quiz. In week 8, you will do a project proposal presentation. Now that's not for marks, that's just for me to give you feedback on, are you on the right track? This is what you need to do, try this, etc. Okay, and then we move up to summary and recap in week 12. Notice the assessment. Individual participation, that's 20%. So what does the participation mean? It means that you can turn your video on if you can, especially when you're speaking. Sarah, I can see you. I want to see more of you. It's very important in part of your participation in this course that I can see you. Okay, and it gives me energy to breathe, and then that makes the whole evening come alive, and we want to do that. I think they'll be wonderful. I can see more of you turning your, you see that 20% in the videos come on. I understand that, but don't do it just because of that. What it means also is that we want you to ask questions, and there'll be times where you go into chat rooms and then we come out and then you do a short presentation. So there are various different ways that you can participate. Now, maybe some of you are shy. Okay, I get that. Maybe some of you found, oh, I didn't give a chance to participate this semester because so-and-so kept on talking and I didn't have an opportunity. Well, at the end of every week, there's another short questionnaire that I ask you to fill out, and you can write your thoughts in that questionnaire, and that will help count towards your participation if you did not participate during the evening. Okay, the sourcing quotation is only 5%. So again, I'm not here to really make a difference between, oh, you only get 1 out of 5 because you really didn't do a good job. I want to give you as many marks as possible out of 5. But I just want to reward you for undertaking this industry engagement activity, okay? Then the quiz, 15%, more about that as the semester goes, but I'll give you a key tip for how you can do very well in the quiz in the next 20 minutes, so watch out for that. And then we have the group case study presentation, I'll tell you all about that. Then we have, and the final, there's 45% for the final project. So what does that mean? Well, there's a video that you have to make as a group, and that's 20%. And that video goes for no more than 15 minutes, and you deliver the video to me in week 12. You do not need to deliver that presentation in the class. And the final fieldwork project report is a 12 to 15 pages. I actually tell you exactly how many pages it is and what you need to write on every page, basically. So I want to make sure that you have clarity about what you have to do well in this unit. Okay, so that's very, are there any questions on that?
No.
Okay, we will go into a little bit more detail in 5 minutes, but the second document gives a little bit more detail on, number 1, participation. Okay, so I've got here 20%. So out of that 20%, 20% of that, 4 marks, setting up and on video in 5 minutes of the class starting. Okay, all right. And now, unless you have a reason for not using a video, etc., I'm willing to accommodate that, but this is a starting expectation. Okay, all right. And B, asking questions and thinking aloud. Now, maybe you didn't have time to ask questions, but you can do thinking aloud in what you write at the end of the class in the questions I ask at the end of the class. Okay, and that the link to that is in the Moodle site. If you look at that after the group of lectures, under the next section after the weekly lectures, I'll point you to that link at the end of this class. Okay, the request for quotation in week 4. You will contact a supplier. Now, it doesn't have to be in China. That supplier can be anywhere around the world, that's fine. But a request for quotation, and I'm proposing that you get a quotation for 2,000 pieces of PPE. Now, that could be face masks, but maybe it's another item of PPE. Now, what does PPE mean? That's personal protection equipment. Okay, so it should be a screen that you wear, not just a face mask. Okay, so, and what you, in that request for quotation, you need to detail the product and parts description, technical details, delivery requirements, price, and payment terms. So that's something that you could do in total. Like, if you did it very efficiently, this could take maybe less than two hours. Okay. Maybe you have to contact 1, 2, 3 suppliers. Maybe you have to email 3 or 4 suppliers. Maybe 3 out of those 4 suppliers ignore you. Then 1 supplier comes back to you and gets you all the information that you need. And so that's maybe an approach that you can take. So this is not a difficult task. What I'm asking you to do is the process of doing this is actually going to be a learning exercise for you. Because when you do a request for quotation, you're going to learn to ask questions. You need to ask questions about, well, what exactly am I getting a quotation for? Okay, and that process is good learning for you. Okay, there's one quiz held during the semester, and then we have group case study, paper presentation. Now that's 15%. Ideal group size is 3 to 4. I'm allowing 5 if that is the norm. Let's see what the total numbers are. If we get more than 40 in the class, I'm happy to allow 5 in a group. Okay, but if we're less than 40, I prefer that we probably have 4. I think 4 might be easier to manage. Okay, then we go to the final part, and that's the group fieldwork project, 45%. And we can talk more about this too. And that is, you can get to choose to do a fieldwork project. So maybe half of you have access to some industry organization that you are connected with. Or maybe you're in a group that a group member has access to that. And the part of that fieldwork is actually to investigate the management of that organization from the supply chain management aspect. And I'm happy to show you examples of some of the projects that were done last year, just to give you more clarity about what we're looking for. Now, some of you say, oh, I don't have access to an organization. Maybe I'm working in education, so I don't get access to a supply chain. I don't have connections. Well, for some groups last year, then I asked them to do a internet or library-based research. And I think 2 hot topics that I would recommend this year are the COVID-19 and impact on the global supply chain, or blockchain and the impact on the global supply chain. These are 2 hot topics that are not going to go away. And I would encourage at least 1 group to do 3 and 4. Last year, there were groups that looked at product compliance risk. That's also a very challenging topic. Or if the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fails, then come and see me and I can give you access to factory visit videos where you would analyze the videos and then write a report on those videos. Okay, if you've just joined me, if you probably haven't known from my YouTube, in the last 5 years, I've visited over 40 factories, okay, 40, and videoed end to end, okay, everything that's going on in the factory. So I have plenty of videos that can be used in projects. All right, so just give you an idea, I just want you to start thinking about what the final project is going to be like. This is something that I want you to get excited about, because this is, your excitement will actually drive your energy to do very, very well in this assessment task. Okay, and the final one is probably most important, is the week-to-week topics. Wow, So week 1, this is what we're covering. There's a bit of classwork. There's questions that we can ask. Some homework. Now these are questions that I'm going to ask you in the following week. Okay, so this is the idea is in next week when you come in, I might put you into groups, and then you may be asked to look at 1, 2, or 3 questions. Okay, and then just briefly discuss back as in a class together. Okay, the questions here are micro questions, so we can, these are just questions for you to think about. Okay, what is O'Connor going to ask us in the quiz? And these are questions, these are the type of questions that I have on my mind, that they're multiple, the quiz is multiple choice, but I'm just showing you that, okay, what are the questions that I need to understand the topic answers to? That's why I've put questions in this column here. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Ginny, are we sharing on this PowerPoint?
Yes, just sharing.
All right. So what I'm going to show you is the resources, and then the resources that will help you in the unit. And then we're going to have some questions, then we're going to have a break. So for the next 20 minutes, I want to spend going through how I can help you in this unit. And then we're going to have a break in 20 minutes. Does that sound like a plan? Yes or no? Do we have a yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We have people alive on the other end. Wonderful. Okay, this is good. All right. So as you know, this is what I do. I go into the factories like this, and what you're going to have during the semester, I'm going to show you 2 factories, and you need to think about, well, which one is the one you should be sourcing from. So we're going to do lots more of that as we go through the unit. When you do if you end up in your presentations during the semester, some of the case studies will require you to compare 2 factories just like that. And your presentation will require you to contrast why factory A is better than factory B, okay? All right, so let's have a look. Now, as I said earlier, the participation and assessment is as follows. And I've mentioned participation online. What do you want from this course? The first question. And I want you to think about be part of a group of 4 members. Okay, so what about the resources? From time to time, we're going to use the Poll Anywhere app, Poll Everywhere app. How many of you have heard of that? Now you can download that on your smartphone, and it looks just like that, okay? And when you download that, it will ask you to join a presentation, and you're probably wondering, well, which presentation do I join? Well, the presentation tonight is Neil O'Connor 027. Can you see that? All right. Now you don't need to do that now, but I'm just saying that's something to get ready for next week. Okay, Neil O'Connor 027. So next week I will say, have you got your poll everywhere ready? And so then you can be ready, and then we can use that during the class for more interaction. Okay, right. But the goal now is not to overload you with technology, but just to show you what we can help you with. Okay, Udemy. How many of you have heard of Udemy before? Have you? You can put your hand up. Okay, some of you, great, excellent. Okay, so if you go to, let's have a look. If you go to this Udemy, China Sourcing Academy Bronze, if you click on here, and you type in a code, you can access this for free. And you have that forever. Okay? Put your hand up if you think that's a good idea. Some of you? Let me explain. In this course, we'll be covering some of the material that's in China Sourcing Academy Bronze. And the good thing about going through this is that after every lecture in this here, there's several multiple choice questions. And in week 8, some of those multiple choice questions will be in the quiz. They may be reworded, they may have different words, but it will help prepare you for the quiz very, very well. Students last year found this to be very, 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 very useful. And so what I'm going to do now is give you access to Udemy. How many of you can see this, CSA1 free? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, you have 3 days to find my China Sourcing Academy here, and then you type in, when you go to the cart, you type in my, wait a minute, that's another Udemy I'm doing. That's what you're going to get, something like this. Okay. You type in CSA1 free, and then you're in. It's yours. Okay, you've got that. And you can have that on your smartphone as an app. You don't need to have that on the computer. Okay, and then you can download the lectures and listen to that on your smartphone. You can listen to it while you're jogging. So that's how effective that Udemy app is. Okay, but I want to be very, very clear. See that CSA1 free, that is only available for 3 days. So can you please do that tonight before you go to bed? Okay? All right? Good. And if any of you have any problems, you can email me tomorrow in the discussion room and I can help you if you need help. Okay, the next resource I want to show you is the YouTube. And how many of you have visited my YouTube channel? Anyone? Some of you? Okay, some of you, great. All right. So what's important about this YouTube channel is it's not about listening to me all the time, but if you go to the MGM5698, you'll see there's the welcome that was in your Moodle site. The second video is how to write a report, and I'll take you through how to write a report for the 25% assessment. The third one is part of tonight's lecture, and also the fourth one as well. So if you miss some of tonight, you can watch any of these and you will get another angle on what I'm talking about for the second topic tonight. When it comes to presenting, you can watch that and they'll tell you how to present. Okay, and then and you don't have to watch these, you will see week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. These are the main lectures I gave last year in 2019. Okay, so if some of you are missing the classroom, the atmosphere, then you can watch some of these videos just to see how I was delivering the class last year. Okay, so I would say there's about maybe 10-15% difference in content from last year, but most of it's the same. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so let me just repeat the resources that you have. We will use Poll Everywhere app from time to time, so just get that ready for next week and week after. We will use Udemy So please use CSA1 free to get free access to the bronze course. And then YouTube Tech Asia, where you'll see several videos that you can use and help you to digest the content that we're covering. Okay. I'm thinking we will need to decide whether we have 4 or 5 members in the group. Okay, so what about the supply chain management? I'm going to take you through tonight briefly the macro environment. Then we're going to go on to the supplier challenges. And basically this week and next week, we're looking at the macro environment. Why is it so special? Like, not a day goes by where in the Wall Street Journal, in Bloomberg, the front page headlines of just about any business magazine around the world, they're talking about COVID and its influence on the supply chain. So we're going to talk about that. But my key idea I want you to take away is I want you to think about how you can make sense of the massive information out there, because my job is not to give you more information. My job is to help you to structure that information, so then you become more intelligent when you are reading these articles about the masks from China, about the trade war, about the latest US policy, about COVID, about the fact that now Malaysia has they've ramped up their production of PPE, about the plastic industry in Malaysia is changing their focus on what they need to be produced because of PPE demand and things like that. You can make greater sense of that because of what we're going to cover in tonight and the next week. Then week 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, we're really going to look at supply chain management from the SME point of view. In other words, what if someone came to you tomorrow and said, oh, you no longer have a job, and what I want you to do for me, you will work for me now. I want you to set up a sales platform, maybe on Amazon, maybe on Shopify, maybe somewhere in a developed country, and I want you to source some product and sell on that platform. Okay, so how would you go about finding a supplier, making sure you got the right supplier, checking that they can make the product that you want, checking that they can make good quality, checking that you can get it on time, checking that if you send money that they are legitimate and receive that money, and checking that you can get the order delivered to that platform to meet the promises that you are given to your customers in USA, in Australia, maybe in Malaysia, maybe you want to set up a shop in Lazada. So that's, I think week 3, 4, 5, and 6 is basically going to teach you how to source if you want to set up a shop in Lazada, okay? Like in a much larger scale than just as a solopreneur, okay? Then when we go to week 7, then we go to week 8, and especially 9, 10, 11, that's where we look at, well, how does Apple manage its supply chain? How does HTC manage its supply chain? So we're going to look at how the Fortune 500 companies manage their supply chain. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to do macro environment. We're going to look at supply chain, how SMEs tackle the supply chain challenges. Then we're going to look at how the big guys do it. The big multinationals manage the supply chain. And there's no other unit in the world that actually looks at supply chain management from those 3 angles all in one course. Actually, in fact, if you go to Harvard, and you can go into Harvard, into several of the big business schools in the US, and you can enroll into a free course on supply chain management, and they will give you the perspective from the large multinational, how a large multinational manages its supply chain. But very rarely will they tell you, well, how does a solopreneur check whether their suppliers are legit? How does an SME manage its supply chain? Very few courses teach you that. And that's what I'm going to teach you in this unit. Okay, just to remind you, the first big assessment area is sourcing quotation. And in week 8, we have a quiz. Now, in week 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 12, I will require 1 to 2 groups to present in any one of those weeks. And the assignments that you have to present are laid out in here, in the third document, that is the week outline. Okay, and so you can see student 1, student 2 case presentation, student 3, student 4 case presentation, week 5, week 6, and so forth. Student group 5, group 6 presentation, group 7, group 8, and I know what some of you are thinking, I want to be group 9, I don't want to be in group 5. I understand it. I'm not going to force anything at the moment tonight, but this is something that you can digest. Make sure you join your groups and make sure that you are pretty familiar with what you need to do over the whole semester. And what you will find is, there may be a lot of work to do in weeks 10, 11, and 12 to finish the major report. Maybe I don't want to be presenting my case study in those weeks. Maybe my group, I want to present early on to get it out of the way, so then I can have more time for the quiz or more time for the final report that I need to do. And maybe you are taking other units that have an exam or have a midterm test in weeks 10 or week 11 or week 12. So I'll leave it to you to think about how best to manage your time this semester, because you have other units that you are obligated to as well. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. Here's my first question for you. Now, can we just check, are your thumbs working? Let's check. Well, let's I want to see all the thumbs. Let's see, show me. All right. Come on, everyone, come on. I'm counting. I want to see every thumb working. Come on, all thumbs up. Okay, we've got some participants. We've got 95% participation. Okay, now I want your hands, okay? Can everyone get their hands working? By the way, if you're in video, you don't need to show that. You can just go like that. Or just put your thumb up, so much easier. If you're in video, this is so much easier. Okay, all right. So I'm going to present something to you. Then you're going to get the vote when I ask you the question. Are you ready? Okay, so first of all, let me just turn the volume of my computer off because it gets very noisy in here. Let me just volume, turn down. Okay, just going to turn it. Well, you won't hear it, but I'll hear it, so I don't want to hear it. Okay, because I haven't shared the screen with you. What you'll find is most of the videos I show you are not, I don't need you to see the volume. I don't need you to hear the volume. You just need to watch and learn. Okay, so what do we have here? What do we have? You can use a chat room if you like, or you can speak out. Sarah, you're in video. What do you see here? What are they making?
Hoverbots. They have hoverbots.
Let me just. I need to hear you when I talk. Okay, that's better. All right. Okay, so we have two factories here.
Mm-hmm.
And wait a minute, let me just turn this volume down and this one. Okay, what are they making?
Hoverboards.
How exactly? Okay, so which factory is, these are two factories I visited, and back in 2018 or end of 2017, the US banned hoverboards from USA. Like, you cannot import a hoverboard into the USA. And quickly, the UL, which is Underwriter Laboratories, which is an assurance firm in Canada that actually gives license to factories to comply with various electrical standards, they had to get together and make a UL standard for hoverboards. And it wasn't until one of these factories that got UL certified, they were able to ship to USA. So my big question to you is, which of these factories became the first UL certified factory to import hoverboards into USA? Which one? That's the question.
The top one.
Okay, hands up that you do this for the top one and thumbs for the bottom one. So I want everyone indicating here because there's participation here.
The first one.
Okay, so what would you say the top one? Elaine, what would you say the top one?
It looks more organized in a way.
It looks more organized. Exactly right. Yes. Shireen, what do you think?
Yeah, it's more organized.
More organized? Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, if you look at the one at the bottom, that is a workshop. What we mean by a workshop is it really isn't a factory. A workshop is where you've got one person that makes the product from scratch, no assembly line at all. And on that day when I visited that workshop, they were making 600, there they are, 600 hoverboards for a French client. And I said to him, do you care that you don't have a UL certification and that you cannot ship to USA, you cannot import into the USA, you cannot sell into the USA? And they said, oh, we don't care. We're selling to France, we're selling to Europe, we're selling to Africa, and we don't need those standards to sell to Africa. Look, there's the QC person. You can see for yourself, okay? All right, so these things are real, and there are buyers making mistakes around the world when they come and then they source from a supplier like this, and then they go and become importer of record in the United States or in Europe that require certification, and they're shipping goods that are not properly certified. And then they get fined, the buyer becomes at risk because then they are subject to penalties. They have to do a product recall. They have to contact the thousands of customers they send to and tell them, oh, you need to send back the product and I need to give you the money back. Okay, so this is the thing that buyers are not aware of when they are sourcing from China, from other developing countries, not just China, any other developing countries are in this boat too, okay? And so you can see two big difference, all right? All right, next one. Last one, and then we're going to have a break. Okay, the story behind this, these are two factories and they are in Dongguan. And I visited these factories in the last 5 years and they are knitwear. Why on earth they are still in Dongguan? How come these factories making very low level type products compared to electronics, compared to higher margin products, why are they still in Dongguan? How can they survive? For 3 reasons. Number one is because they are small, they're under the radar of regulation and taxes, so therefore they can still survive. Number two, they're able to hire labor at piecework. Under Chinese labor law, you cannot hire labor at piecework, but because they're small, they're able to do that and actually go under the radar and still operate without anyone knowing. And number three, here's the big thing is, and no one knows this, is one of these factories is secretly outsourcing to another factory in another province, which is much cheaper. So here's the big question for your hands or for your thumb. Which factory do you think is secretly outsourcing? That is, they're secretly outsourcing to another factory in another province in China that is much cheaper, and but they're not telling the buyer that they are doing this. So which one? Hands for the top one or thumbs for the bottom one? We've got some hands. Any thumbs? Okay, we've got our hands. Okay, you're all right. The one at the top is secretly outsourcing. The one at the bottom is basically doing all the knitting. You can see the machines, they're knitting them themselves, okay? All right, so these are the things that you do not see by reading a textbook, and this is something this is something that I'm so excited about this unit, is to give you a bird's eye view of, if you want to manage a supply chain properly, you need to know the factory you are buying from. You need to know how good is it or how bad is it, okay? How bad is it? Because you're getting a very cheap price, but you need to know that you're getting a cheap price because it's bad, but you know that, all right? Don't be shocked to expect that they're secretly outsourcing if they're giving you a good deal. All right, so let's have a break for about 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and then after that break, we will start on the content I want to cover for tonight. But just, I want you to think about what we've just covered. I've just given you a brief introduction to the assessment. I've given you a brief introduction to the style of teaching that I'm going to bring to this unit, and just to give you a feel to understand what you're going to expect in this unit. So I'm happy to see you. I'll come back here at about 8:05 if you want to break for 10 minutes. Good? Okay. Okay, so see you in 10 minutes, come back. In the meantime, if you want to in the chat room, ask questions, you're most welcome to. I'll still be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ginny. I just sent a private message to you if you can check. Okay, can you all hear me? Welcome back. Yes, and it's a beautiful night here in Hong Kong. I just want to show you the beautiful lights in Hong Kong. There we go. Look at that. Yeah. All right. There you go. Okay. Can you all hear me? Okay,
Yes.
that's great. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, I've got the chat room here. Let me share my screen. Okay, mega trends in global sourcing. This is very important. We could go on all night, or actually a whole semester, in talking about many of these issues. And I could poll you next week to tell me about which areas do you think are the relevant issues in 2020. But for now, look at that, you know, information overload. When you talk about all the different challenges, problems, complexity, opportunity, everything in global supply chain. So my job is to help make this navigatable. And that's what we're going to be doing for the next 10 to 12 weeks. I have a question for you. Which one of these items do you think are critical today? Which one do you think is most critical out of these?
Is it cyber risk?
Cyber risk, yeah, that's cyber risk. Anyone else? For anyone else?
Globalization.
Globalization, very general term it is. And
Customer service.
Growth.
okay, market growth. Okay, all right. Let me just see what you've got here. All right, so someone said globalization, someone said market growth, and someone said cyber risk. Anyone else?
Customer service.
Customer service. Wait a minute. Okay, so what? We've got everything here. Okay. What about predictions and forecasting? Maybe,
Yes.
maybe not. What about?
I guess it's quite relevant to the market growth, especially due to the current COVID situation. So
Ah,
that's the current, yeah.
that's a very good point. Yes. Here, yeah, COVID. Why? What happened? What happened this year? Everything got upset. All the supply
Everything's
chains got upset. Nothing moving, nothing shipping. It's interesting. Anyway, I was talking to the global supply chain manager of HTC. How many of you know HTC? Let me write it down. When I say HTC, I mean HTC. Okay, a Taiwanese company, brand name company, and I think they're at the top of their game in 2012. Anyway, so I've been doing some work for HTC, and several years ago I asked the chief global supply chain manager, I said, what's your biggest challenge? Which out of all of these, which one do you think he suggested? Which one out of all of these? Which one? It's HTC. They manufactured, they were doing 30 million smartphones a year in 2012. What do you think their biggest challenge was?
Technological advancements?
Yeah, yes, possible.
Predictions.
It's easier than that. Let me this one here. Predictions and forecasting. Isn't that interesting? Like 5, 6, 7 years ago, when I talked to the global supply chain manager of a big multinational like HTC, they say predictions and forecasting. Now we're in 2020, we have the worst pandemic in the last 100 years, and still predictions and forecasting are still pretty much on the agenda. All right. In 2020, every company around the world did not forecast, did not predict where we will be now, 6 months later. Okay. And when you can't predict and when you can't forecast, that's going to affect your customer service. It's going to affect your market growth. It's going to affect your inventory management. It's going to affect everything else. And if you're not shipping anything, then cyber risk doesn't matter. If you're not making any money, globalization doesn't matter. You're with me here. Prediction forecasting is a very big area in any supply chain management. Okay, so we're going to learn more about that as we go along too. Okay, and here are 8 megatrends that I put together. This is about 2 years ago I put this together. Some of these are still relevant, some not so. And in about an hour, I'll tell you about 10 megatrends that I think are for 2020. But some of these are still relevant, some of them are not. But when I talk to suppliers, here are the big challenges that they tell me, that the problems that they're going with. Size, human resources, I can say that's still a big problem. Quality mindset, yes, that's still a problem. Being world class, yes. Actually, a lot of these things are still problems of emerging economy suppliers. What about for buyers? I would say compliance, yep. Collaboration, logistics, speed to market. A lot of these things are still challenges for buyers, okay? And I made this list over 2 years ago. Okay, so I want you to think, in the last 3 months, the information overload that you are getting about, well, how are we going to manage the supply chain, in COVID, and with the world's airlines are not flying, the ships not moving as fast, countries are being locked down. I cannot send my team to factories in emerging economies because they cannot go in there without quarantine. A lot of these issues are still relevant. Okay, so I don't want you to feel that, all this information for the last 3 months is all you need to know. There are core elements of a supply chain that are still relevant even in 2020. And just COVID have just made them more important. COVID really hasn't brought new ideas or new challenges. There are new challenges, but in the end, a lot of those challenges because no one predicted it, okay? No one predicted COVID. No one predicted our countries will be locked down like they have. And when you don't predict, then everything goes pear-shaped, out of control. So what can you do? All right, so get back to basics. Here are the basic problems or challenges that buyers are still having. Number 6 is black box manufacturing. That's protecting IP. I was talking to a client less than 2 days ago about how to protect their IP in China. Equity joint ventures, maybe not as important. Trade agreements, yeah, the trade war. has made number 8 still very, very important. So these are issues that are still critical. Now let's go and have a look at COVID-19 directly. Are you ready? Fasten your seatbelts, because I want you to go for a ride with me and take you through this very, very quickly. There was panic. How many of you have seen panic buying? Did any of you see panic buying? Like, didn't you see that in the supermarkets in Malaysia?
Toilet paper.
Yeah.
Look, if you did not see panic buying, what you did see is lines outside of supermarkets. What you did see is signs on supermarkets saying no more than 2 packs of toilet rolls per customer. Like, I go into Jaya and that's a sign that they have, okay? I've never ever seen that in the last 3 decades in supermarkets, all right? Panic buying, the supply of PPE, the demand for PPE, bottlenecks, and long-term impacts. So I'm just going to take you through these 5 areas. Okay, so there were empty grocery shelves. So what you need to know, here's the big thing you need to know, is that supermarkets are different. Why are they different? Because they hold very, very little inventory over time, and they stock up their inventory on a daily basis. Okay, supermarkets over time, they do not just buy a heap of inventory at the start of the month and then let that be used up over the month. They don't do that. That's why you have panic buying. If supermarkets had a huge stock of inventory here, okay, you can have all the panic buying in the world. You'll just, okay, that will all be used up, but everyone will get what they want, okay? But supermarkets don't work like that. They work on a minimal inventory model where inventory is delivered to supermarkets every day. And at the very most, any one stock keeping unit, there's only 2 or 3 days of stock. Okay, so that's why when you get panic buying, it's because of inventory. It's the inventory management model of supermarkets, and they have a very low margin, so they don't have huge stocks of inventory. Okay, so what happened with the supply of PPE? Well, at the end of 2019, how many factories do you think were making PPE in China? Have a guess. How many?
Few thousand.
A few thousand, I think. Okay, a little bit more. Come on, a little bit higher.
10,000.
Yeah, about 10,000. Okay, it's about 10,000. So within less than 1 month into February, suddenly 28,000 factories entered. Now that's one source. That's one source I got. I was talking to a guy in the US 2 days ago. He does sourcing of PPE in the US. He was telling me that he heard there were 35,000 factories making PPE. And that's China alone. Like on average, China supplies 50% of the PPE around the world at the end of last year. Within 2 months, China became the source of about 75% of the PPE in the world demand, like just ginormous. And so you had N95 masks went from, they were able to make 200,000 a day to 1.6 million a day. Now the normal price for an N95 mask is about $1 US. Okay, $1 US. Is it about one? Maybe a little bit, $1 or $2 US. That went up to $8 or $9 US, 4 times. Crazy. Okay, and you can see that the daily production went from 10 million to start of February to 116 million 4 weeks later, like 12 times increase. Okay, so there was a lot of bad factories came into the mix during February. I'll give you an example. Last year, I bought some masks on Lazada for 109. I got 20 of these N95 for 119. September. Okay, so 6 months later, that's a bit more. The same 20 pack went from 119 to 300 ringgit. Okay, so there's your Malaysian price. So you can go Lazada today, you're going to pay 300 ringgit for 20 of these masks. Okay, so that's the economics of the supply and demand. Okay, so what you had to do in early March, and by the time we got near the end of February, early March, countries around the world started to realize, oh, hang on, this COVID is going to affect our medical sector by a large amount. And they started deciding, well, we need to get masks, we need to get PPE, we need to get gowns, we need to get face protective covering. And so what happened was you had to decide quick. By the time we got into early February, mid-February, by the end of late February, you had to put money on the table with the factory before they made anything. You had to put 100% on the table. Now, what I'm going to teach you in a couple of weeks' time is you never do that. Don't ever do that. At the most, you put 30% down at the time of order. You put maybe 30%, 40% at the time of shipping, and then 30% when it arrives in your country. And if your supplier is more power than you, they'll say, no. We want 30% at the time of order and 70% when we make the goods for you. Well, when it comes to mask manufacture, if you did not put down 100% at the time of order, you would not get an order. That's what it was just crazy. And a lot of this was caused by middlemen. There's a lot of people that went to factories and put down $1 million and said to the factory, I want to buy your production of masks for the next month. And I want you to make 100,000 masks per week for the next month. Here's $1 million. And then they went and sold those masks for 3 or 4 times what they were paying the factory. And the demand was there. It was very easy to do that. And so that was a big problem. There was a lot of middleman problems. So what happened near the end was countries around the world started to get very low quality masks. And this happened in early March, where Europe, the EU suspended delivery of 10 million masks over quality issues. And in various countries in Europe realized they were receiving masks, but they were not up to quality because you had 35,000 factories making them. And you had these middlemen just saying, here's the money, just get me the masks and I will sell them. No one was checking the quality. But what China did by the end of March, and I'll tell you about that. Let me just document what was happening. In February, the problem was raw materials and labor, because they couldn't get enough raw materials to make the masks. They couldn't get enough labor to make the masks because China was shut down. And when the factories wanted to ramp up production, they couldn't get the people back from the province they went home to because China wouldn't allow various factory workers that were maybe working in Shenzhen, that were working in Guangzhou or Shanghai, Zhejiang, different eastern seaboard provinces. They had to go back to their hometown for Chinese New Year. The Chinese government wouldn't allow them to go back to their province where they work in a factory. So factories couldn't operate. And so by the end of February, the China government wanted to get all the factories ramped up. And so then they allowed people to come back to the factories. Now, when we got into March, what happened was that airlines around the world and governments around the world started forcing airlines to say, well, we want to restrict you coming from a certain country. No more flights from China, no more flights from other countries. And so now 50% of the freight that is delivered around the world up until February actually is packed into the bottom of passenger aircraft. Did you know that? at any one time around the world, there was up until February this year, there was 500,000 people in aeroplanes in the air. Okay, and those aeroplanes, in the bottom part of those aeroplanes, they are carrying half of the world's air freight. The other half of the world's air freight are going in the normal freight air carriers. And freight at that time was only, let me write this down for you, was only $3 a kilogram. Okay, within 1 month, the freight went up. How much do you think per kilogram? 15 to $18 a kilogram. Like, that's crazy. Like, you cannot make money when you're sourcing and you're paying freight at $15 to $18 a kilogram. You go out of business. Okay, so why did that occur? Because half of the air freight around the world couldn't work, and you had in the end, you had airlines packing their passenger cabins with freight themselves. And then regulations late March, the China government said, oh, all of the factories in China that are making PPE, you must be certified to register to produce for domestic production, and which to some degrees is a higher standard than for export, because a lot of export was sent to countries that didn't have any standards at all. They were sending exports to various Mediterranean countries, other Asia countries that really didn't have standards on PPE. It wasn't just the US was saying don't send masks to US that are below standard. But the China government said, well, sorry, you need to register as a domestic producer, and also you need to produce for domestic consumption first before you can export. And that cut a lot of the availability of PPE for the US, for Europe, and that created another bottleneck. And as I said, in April, the air freight rose to 15 to 18 US dollars per kilogram. And then by the 10th of April, the China government said, well, any exports of PPE need to be inspected by customs. Of course, they cannot inspect every 100% of every export, but it slowed down a lot of exports out of China. And so these are all the bottlenecks that occurred during February, March, and April. And like this is crazy. Something like this has never ever happened in the last 50 years of managing a supply chain. Okay. So here's my summary of what I think you need to think about. Now, some of you in a group are going to study the impact of COVID on the supply chain. And I'd like you as a group that choose that topic to think about its impact on a particular industry. So you'd have to go into more depth than what I am doing now. But here is a framework that I am showing you to help you make sense of all of that information overload out there. Okay, so let's start. Number one, first of all, there was bottlenecks. There was a shortage of demand. Then there was the bottlenecks. And then suddenly you had so much buyer demand in PPE that it just created huge gyrations in PPE, but it also created a lot of problems in the sourcing of other goods out of developing countries into the developed world. Other goods like pens, for example, other goods like spectacles or plastic bottles or ceramic cups, like We're not just talking about PPE. There was a lot of uncertainty created by, number one, the trade war, number two, Corona-19. And for the SMEs, their biggest strategic change was to think about, well, maybe we need to change the contracts, change the cost of tariffs onto customers if they were exporting into USA. Or maybe we need to shift out of China, or redesign products to have less parts from China. That's the trade war. The trade war forced SMEs to think about this. How many of you know the GoPro camera? You're all familiar with the GoPro? Okay, the GoPro camera was once manufactured in a factory out of, I think it was Zhejiang province, south of Zhejiang province, south of Shanghai, home of Alibaba, that province. Okay, now they have moved their factory out of China. I think they moved into Thailand because of the trade war. Okay, there was a robo vacuum cleaner company that were making the robotic vacuum cleaner that you put on the floor and it will go around and actually clean the floor. You're familiar with that? Well, a major vacuum company they were making in China, they closed up their factory. Guess which country they moved to? They moved to Malaysia. Your country. Okay? Trade war caused this. The trade war was the cause of this. Okay? Because they were exporting, now they're exporting out of Thailand, out of Malaysia into the USA. And they don't have to worry about the tariffs. They don't have to worry about the 10%, the 15% tariffs that are being put onto these products. Okay, so the trade war created a lot of uncertainty. But for the MNCs, like the large multinationals, they have a different view of the world. When the trade war occurred, they could say, okay, we've got a portfolio of countries that we are sourcing from. We can actually change, okay, let's change our sourcing from China from 20% down to 15% or 35% down to 20%. So they're still in China, but they might ramp up their sourcing from another country. Maybe they're already in Vietnam, so then they could ramp up their production capacity in Vietnam. Maybe they could ramp up their production capacity in India or Bangladesh or in Malaysia or Thailand. If electronics are ramping up production in Thailand and closing down production in China is a pretty popular change of venue. But for the multinationals, they're not going to close up in China. So my big question for you is, why do you think multinationals, or even some SMEs for that matter, why do you think they will not close their factory in China in the long term? Why do you think? It's a question for you. Hello, is everyone alive? The question is, okay, why do you think multinationals will be reluctant to close their production in China?
I think in order to close the factories, it'll take a lot of years, so it take time, cost of time, and
Maybe they do not want to give up on the Chinese market.
yeah.
What was that?
They might not want to give up on the Chinese market, so they want to retain a small part of production line in China.
Wow, okay, I like this one. It takes time to change. Number two, the market possible. Can we have a third one?
Relationships or like the deals that MNCs are able to secure from this Chinese.
Okay, okay. Let me just.
I have one as well. Maybe just adding on to number 2 and number 3. I guess if they were to close, then in future it might be harder to go back into China, like the market, the entry.
Oh, so then it's the
because
market. Okay,
it's
that's
sort of like 2 and 3. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3 here. Now we want everyone to vote on 1, 2, and 3. All right. Okay, so because see, I want you to participate. All right, I want you to think about this. All right, so you've heard 1, 2, and 3. So hands up for number 1. If you're in video, I can see the hands. All right, but if you are not, then you need to show a hand. If you, all right, hands up for 1. Okay, so we've got 1. Ginny, help me if you see more hands than what I see.
Yes, sure.
Okay, all right. Hands up for 2. Okay, so there's a few more hands here. Hands up for 3. Okay, good. Okay, all right. I would, if I were to put a percentage on it, I would say, if I rank these, I would say probably number 1, probably 2, and number 3. Okay. The market in 2023, China's consumer market, if not before, will be the largest in the world. Okay. So, how far away is 2023? It's less than 3. It's less than 3 years away. Okay, so that should be on any conversation that any boards of directors in a major company are having anywhere around the world today. All right, that is, where is the China consumer going to be in 3 years' time? Oh, it's going to be the largest in the world. What are we doing? What are you doing? Closing the factory in China. Don't keep it open. Stay in China. Okay. All right. See, you can understand this conversation that they're going to have. All right. All right. Now, so if we're going to stay in China, okay, it's going to be more expensive. So how do you stay in China? Well, you need to think you're staying in China partly. And who mentioned the relationship? I think I agree. The relationship is very important. And relationship is partly to do with the ecosystem. You want to stay because of the ecosystem. That is, if you're in electronics, so China has the best and the largest ecosystem in the world. You cannot replace the ecosystem in China by sending your factory to Vietnam or Malaysia or to Thailand. Yes, they have electronics ecosystems, but they're not the same scale. Vietnam has 1/25th the size of port capacity as China, 1/25th, okay? All right, Malaysia has a port capacity of 10 million TFUs. Do you know what that means? I'll talk about that. 10 million TFUs, that's Malaysia's capacity. Vietnam's about the same, India has about 10 million. China has about 170 million, okay, capacity. That's the difference, all right, port capacity, all right, so big difference. So it's hard to compare. When people say, oh, we're moving out of China, well, yes, for an SME, that is the wise move because you cannot afford to be in more than one country. So, and you need to think, what is your dominant market? If US is going to be a dominant market like GoPro, then we need to go to Thailand. And that's what they did. That's what they did. All right. And so if you're going to stay in China, what I'm going to teach you in week 8, 9, and 10 is, okay, how do you improve the operations of the supplier? And what are the major multinationals doing? Because they are there. So they've got virtual design teams. They're consolidating the supply base, and they're working on getting more their 2-tier supply chain transparency. Okay, and of course, you know, from USA, you have this whole thing of reshoring politics, and that means that if you are making anything that is sensitive, that is food or PPE, I can bet in 2 or 3 years' time, the developed economies, USA, Australia, Europe, they will have much more factory capacity set up for the manufacture of the food, medical equipment, pharmaceutical, and they'll be less reliant on China in 3-4 years' time. So that's my general take on what's going on in terms of, okay, how is COVID affecting SMEs? How is COVID affecting multinationals? All right, and so here is what you probably want to think about in terms of the reshoring. That is, yes, reshoring. Yes.
I got a question on the previous slide on the long-term trade war thing. So right now with US's China trade war, do you think they would start with India, because India's got this new Make in India movement going on? So they're trying to source everything from within itself. So do you think US would like move on to India?
And what, have a trade war with India? No, I don't think so.
No, not a trade war. As in like do you think they would like, what do you say, source more stuff from India now with the...
Okay, that's correct. And that's what Apple is doing. Apple is getting Foxconn to set up an assembly plant in India to make the iPhones and all of their product family.
Didn't that already start, or?
That's in the process of setting up.
The process, all right.
Yes. No, that's a very, very good point from India. India is going to play a larger role in the global supply chain, beyond garments, beyond the non-electrical goods, and India is going to play a greater role in electrical goods, where China has been a dominant player to now. So that's a very, very good point.
All right, thanks.
But to your point, you're actually raising a very interesting point, and that's the big bottleneck for India is going to be their port capacity, because their port capacity is no larger than 10 million TFUs per year. Okay, so there's only so much you can do. The big thing that China did in the 1950s and the 60s and the 70s, well, they've continued to do was set up their infrastructure. So the logistics run like clockwork today. And that's what India needs to work more on. India has the superiority when it comes to engineering and engineering technology, or people that you need to hire that are competent, especially in English, especially in mathematics, especially in engineering skill set. Engineering has all that capability. India has all that capability. China has too, but India can match China in those capabilities. But India needs to work more on its infrastructure so it can then ramp up the capacity that China now has. So absolutely, there's much more opportunity for India in the future. What's the economics of reshoring? It would be if you had a short life cycle, so a 4-week boat trip, or usually a small and high value item, so an iPhone can be easily sent by air, but a heavy bulky item like a fridge cannot. So there are only certain products that could be reshoring. So a question that you might come across in conversations about supply chain management, well, politicians are saying, like Trump is saying, we need to bring everything's got to be made in USA now. Well, no, you need to be smart about this, okay? And if the total cost to make a product in the USA is only $10 US, and in China it ends up being $8 US, then you make it in USA. But what if it costs you $20 US to make in USA? Then you might think about reshoring. So it's a cost benefit thing. There are political sensitivities with regard to PPE and food and pharmaceutical, but beyond that, then we think about the economics of the product that we are reshoring. But the following products you would stay in China, and that is labour-intensive manufacturing, labour-intensive, where there's a highly manual process. And then when we say stay in China, maybe we can talk about stay in India, or stay in Bangladesh, or stay in Thailand, or Vietnam, or Malaysia. Okay, I don't just want to say China all the time. But China just happens to be sensitive with respect to US politics at this very moment because of the trade war. Okay, and also if you're talking about giveaway toys or promotional items. Okay, so, and we talk about other countries. If there's no need for a strong ecosystem or speed to market or long product cycles or low value goods, then it doesn't make any sense to stay in China. You could just source from Vietnam or Thailand, Malaysia, Bangladesh, India. There is where you don't need that fast logistics, or you don't need that strong ecosystem. You could no need to reshore. So a project that you can think about as a group, if you're going to do COVID, is to think about how COVID is impacting on a particular industry in this framework. And then you may look more specifically in terms of the cost benefits of sourcing in that particular industry as a result of what has COVID and the trade war caused on that supply chain. Okay, remember I told you about 25 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, that I had a top 10 for the buyers and megatrends for the buyers and megatrends for the suppliers. So now we have the top 10 COVID-19 trends. So what I'm going to do for you now, we're going to have a practice. We're going to do a practice one of getting you into, this is just for fun now, okay? Okay, your task is, you're going to have 5 minutes only, 5 minutes, and I'm going to make, how many groups? Let's make 6 or 8 groups, and you've got 5 minutes to look at this list of 10 items and to tell me which do you think are going to be the top 3 items in your view for a particular, you may say for a particular industry, these are the top 3 items. Okay, but I'm only going to ask you to have 3 items in your view. What do you think are most relevant? You only have 3 and you've got 5 minutes to look at these 10 items. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm going to put you into groups now. We're going to practice. How many of you have done this before? You've gone into an anonymous group, a random group. Have you done this before? Okay, so we're going to try this, but here's the thing that I'm going to do. I force you to, it's going to be a very, very fast meeting because I've done this before in undergraduate and we've given them 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but they tend to waste time. So it's going to be a speed session, so we make it very, very fast. So let's have a look. More, we're going to breakout rooms. I'm going to, there's 41 participants. So I'm going to create 8 breakout rooms, create, and it's going to be automatic. And then you've got 5 minutes, no more. So 300 seconds. So as soon as you get in that breakout room, you start talking. You just start talking, okay? Don't use that 5 minutes to get to know everyone. Just start talking, and we'll have fun. We'll do this again in an hour's time as well. So let's go. Open all rooms. Okay, you've got 5 minutes. Go. Go. Ginny, you can stay in the main one if you like.
Sorry, sir. Can you repeat again?
Ginny, you can stay in my room if you like.
Oh, okay. There's one guy. Okay.
Okay, that's great. Okay, I'm not sure if I was too slow in that session, but they've got a video they can watch anyway. If I'm, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've done this breakout rooms before, and what I've found. Have you done this before, Ginny?
Never, sir. Never.
Yeah. So what they do, what I found is that what you do is you give a time limit. So now it's 8:49. So at 8:54, we just close them all, and then they've got to come back, bang.
Okay.
And then it forces them to talk, because what we did in the undergraduate, in the FinTech unit, we gave them 10 minutes. And when we went into some of the rooms, they were talking slowly. What do you think? I don't know. Oh, what do you think? And they were not very, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
At this time, it's called speed meeting, you know. But if you want to join any, you can if you want to. Wait a minute, more chat. Wait a minute, someone's got a chat.
Okay, sure.
Let's have a,
Yeah.
is there any chat? Is there a chat for me?
Oh yeah, I actually sent one to you.
Okay. And maybe at the end of this session, what I'll do is, maybe I'll create 8 breakout rooms on particular topics, and then they can then go in and join them manually. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
Just so it's an idea that they can go in and start to talk about their interest and help them get together about, you know, in terms of a group. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yeah.
So I think we'll do that.
Sorry, I just disconnected just now.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, my line just disconnected when I joined the breakout room.
Oh, really? Okay. So
yeah, I'm group room 5.
Sure, no problem. So do you need to, you're not allowed to join now? Let's have a look. 5.
Not sure how to do it.
I think there is a button down there, join, beside the record. There's a join breakout room.
Can you do that? Can you find the button to join breakout room?
Where is it? Beside the...
If you click on
the...
click on the 3 dots.
3 dots. Oh, okay.
I think it's 4.
Oh, thank you, Ginny, for correcting me. I like that. 3 dots.
Sorry.
No, on the side of the video, it's 3 dots, and then on the big one, no, it's only 3. All right.
But he's still here. Can you find the? Can you find it?
There's no join breakout room option.
I can see it from here though. It's like share screen, record, join breakout session.
No, there's no for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try and join this. I'll leave and try again. This is my connection problem.
That's all right. You'll be fine. Then you say 1 minute left. 1 minute left. I just put the pressure on him, Ginny. I just said 1 minute left.
Oh, hi, you're
Uh,
back.
Yeah, it says please wait to be assigned. So there's no option for me to.
Oh, sir, King G, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry. We will just stay where you are, and we'll bring this session back, and we'll make sure you get into one next time.
All right, no problem.
No problem. All good. Have you got your video? Your video helps, Ching Ji. Can you use your video? How's your bandwidth?
Yep, it's all good.
You look great. Are you in Malaysia?
Yeah, I'm in Malaysia.
Wow, those AirPods look great on you too.
It's easier to listen through earphones.
Yeah, much easier. I hear you. All right, I'm going to close all rooms now. Oh, wait a minute, they got 60 seconds. I didn't know they had 60 seconds. I just wanted to close them out immediately. But anyway, they're coming back. Ginny, I know that now. I'll close it 1 minute before.
It's okay, sir. They're ready.
I like it. They're coming back. 41 seconds, 40, 39. I love it. Is that Nada Aban? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, how did you go in your breakout room?
Oh, it was good, yeah.
Yeah, okay, we'll do more of this. We've got to try and energize the evening a bit more rather than listening to me all the time. You'll get sick of me, I think. Okay, how's the lesson so far, Nadia, for you?
Me?
Yeah, how is the lesson going for you so far?
Oh, I think like it's quite interesting because I like when like you're bringing like real examples. So I really like that.
Okay, that's great. That's good. Don't forget, Nadia, did you get the Udemy code?
Yeah, I'll do it after. Oh.
Yeah, you got 3 days to log in, and then that's fun.
The bronze one, right? Not the silver.
Sorry, sir?
So on that link you sent, basically there's two of them. There's bronze and silver.
Yeah, just join the bronze for now. I don't want you to have overload.
Okay.
Yeah, I partnered with a friend called Mike Bellamy in 2015-16, and we created 10.5 hours of videos to teach buyers around the world about how to source from China.
Oh, okay.
And I made up 250 multiple choice questions, and I used some of those multiple choice questions in my quiz. So there's a incentive to watch some of the Udemy. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to close all the rooms. Are we all back? Ginny, are they all back or not?
I think so. They're all back.
How do I close all the rooms? Recreate, not started. Okay. Are we all back? We're all back. Excellent. Good. Okay, so the question is, okay, and you can put the numbers, you can read out the numbers. What did you think? Like this top 10 is what I think. What do you think is your top 3?
The number, so for us in our group, we chose 3, 6, 10.
Okay, let me mark this out. All right, so let's have a look. We got 1 for 3, 1 for 6, 1 for 10. Okay,
10.
And why did you pick 3?
3, I mean, it's basically risk is something everyone wants to avoid. So this should be something.
Okay, that's good. All right, what about the second group? What did you come up with? Hello, okay, third group. We're going to go fast here. Third group. Second group just missed out. Third group. Speak up.
Do we know which group are we?
For the I'm representing the third group, so we pick 4, 7, and 10.
4, 7 and 10. Okay. Okay. Second group there.
I'm not sure which group we are, but we pick 1, 4, and 10.
1, 4, and 10. Okay. And Sarah, what did you pick? 1. Was 1 the most important out of your 3?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. All right. Next, another group. Elaine, which group? Doesn't matter. What was your top 3?
I mentioned this now. We pick 4, 7, and
okay,
10.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And another group.
We have group 4, and we pick 8, 9, and 10.
8. Oh, interesting. Why did you pick 8 or 9? What did you think?
For number 8, we all agree that it's better to have more options, so we would like to diversify our sourcing options.
Very sensitive, pharmaceuticals and food, huh? Okay, everyone's got to live, right? We can all do without all the other goods, but we need food and medicine and PPE. Yes. Okay. Next group.
I'm not sure what group we are, but we chose 4, 7, and 8.
Okay. 4,
7, and 8.
And 8. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Do the group numbers matter, or?
It doesn't matter. Just yell it out. What did you pick?
All right. Our group had 3, 6, and 10 as well.
3, 6, and 10. So why did you pick 6?
Would anybody like to represent? Because I didn't really agree with 6.
What did you? What was your personal preference?
I was either gonna go with 4 or 9.
Ah, okay. So 9, huh? Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Let me try. Mangeles. Okay. She was in my
6
group.
is very relevant. I think 6 is relevant because MNCs can no longer be tied to a country. Because, for example, with the trade war between India and China, so that's really affecting trade between India and China. And if it's going to be dependent on one country solely, that's really going to affect the business. So I think that's not the way forward. And they have to diversify and be present in many countries. And also with cloud technology and all that, there is no need for physical presence. Everything can be done from dispersed locations. So there is, I think the future is going to be on cloud and not really dependent on physical presence in any particular country.
Okay, so what numbers are highlighting these 2 points? And what's your name? Manglis. You made 2 very good points there about diversification in the cloud. Which of these numbers best represent those 2 points that you made? Or is this a number 11 or 12 that you're talking about?
We actually chose 3, 6, and 10.
Okay.
Our group. And also I think 10 is also relevant to redesigning because the presence is more online rather than physical. So I think it sort of complements.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's only so much you can do online. It's interesting what you'll find. If I ask you these questions in 6 weeks' time, I think you might have a different answer. But let's see, eh?
Let's see. That'll be interesting.
Yes, I think it will be very, very interesting. So there you go. Look. Okay. The purpose of this exercise, number 1, is let's have a bit of fun to make sure that you can have some interaction. But my big idea is to have speed meetings. That is, let's do it very, very fast and let's get that information transferred as fast as possible and make the most of our time. But look at this. I put you in the groups. I asked you to give me the 3 top ones, but none of you selected 5. All right? And none of you selected number 2. And only 1 for 9. You didn't think that was big, and number 1 so that's interesting. So that's something that we can Number two, attention to third and let me put an argument for number two. Okay, attention to second and third tier suppliers will occur. I tell you, if you are talking to, if you're talking to the global supply chain manager of Puma, she's a French lady who lives here in Hong Kong, I know her. If you ask her, number two will be on her number one priority, because the second and third tier suppliers is one of their greatest risks for Nike, Puma, Adidas, Under Armour, because in the textiles industry, second and third tier suppliers are very, very critical. And the transparency of the fact that they're not using hazardous substances, and the fact that they're not using underage labour, any of these issues comes out in the press, can destroy their brand image. And so number two is very, very important. So the point I'm making is that, yes, there are 10 areas here that I think are important trends, but depends on which industry, right? Depends on which industry. So if I say Puma and Nike, then number two is very important. If we say PPE, well, maybe number two. If you're talking about if you're talking about the middle fabric that goes into the mask, the special, what is it? The non-woven mold fabric that goes into the mask, then number two may be important. So when you go into the particular industry, then that forces you to think a little bit more about, well, what are the key materials and what are the key material risks associated with that product? Not the final product, but the materials that go into that product. And do we need to know about where those materials are coming from? Wow, exciting, exciting. Okay, so I think there's a big lesson for you to think about. If you're going to look at COVID and its effect, it depends on which industry. And a great effort on your group work. Let's have a break now for 8 minutes. And when we come back, I'll go through the last part. And that is, let's have a look, the China restructuring in the next China. And then that will take us to our last chapter of tonight. And I'll see you in about 8 minutes. If you want to come back before then, that's great. But they're 8-minute break. Is it okay?
Yep.
Okay. And we've got a lot to cover when you come back. So get some food, sustenance, and get ready for that final breath. See you soon. just a reminder, everyone, to CS1 free. So if you go into Udemy to join, that's a free code. I think we're all coming back now. Hello, everyone. Knock, knock.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back. I should have a little gong. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, something like that, you know. Okay. And, you know, have you all got your spray? Okay. Right. Okay, let's have fun here. We've got our last section, and I'm going to make it very, very quick because we want to have another little group activity, so then you can have a little bit more fun interacting with each other. Okay, sound like a plan? All right, let me first of all screen sharing. Let me just stop. We're going to start again, share screen again, and that's this one, share the screen. Okay, and then I'm going to chat. Okay, good. So macro shifts, China restructuring next China, and you're probably thinking, sorry, I thought this was a global supply chain management course, and but you're talking about China. Okay, yes. At any one point in time, you can raise questions about India, Vietnam, Malaysia, all right, Cambodia, Thailand, all of Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, any country around the world. So don't feel as though that we have to just talk about China. I think we already had Mangals talk about India, so I'm happy to have conversations with any other country that we're sourcing from here. But I just want to give you a sense of, earlier I said in 2023, China's going to have the largest consumer market in the world. And I think that's the reason why multinational wants to stay there. But I just want to show you very briefly what has happened in the last, what China was doing is what USA took about 60 years to do. USA went from here, let me just put it on the present mode. Okay, display settings. Okay, USA went from here to here. In how long? In 60 years. China took 30 years. China's doing the same in half the time. And I think that's very, very special that you need to be aware of. 30 is 70% urbanization. But I think this is happening even faster than 2028 that they're talking about. So that's the first thing. And that's why the consumer is going to be the largest consumer economy market in the world by 2023. Here's something that people don't understand, but always, and the thing about China is that China has, if you look at USA is like this. They have C here and they have C on this side, right? But China, it looks like this, right? China has C here, but there's no C here. You with me? Okay. So the big challenge that China has faced in the last 3 decades is the people that live over here, okay? The people who live here don't earn as much, or they're not as rich as the people over here, okay? So with USA, what do people do? They go to California. What do? They go to New York, okay? In China, you would say, oh, these people, why don't you just move to Shanghai? Why don't you move to Hong Kong? Why don't you move to Beijing or Guangzhou or anywhere along here, because this is the rich part of China? Well, if China did that, there would be 1.5 or 4 billion people in this area. That's impossible to sustain. You hear me here? So what the China government does is the China government gives money to these provinces over here in called subsidies. And then when people go to work when they go to work here, they are not allowed to have the same rights as the people that already live and are born on the eastern seaboard. And they call that the hukou system. And China has done that for the last hukou. Forgive me for spelling this wrong. And so because you don't have the same rights in terms of medical, schooling, and access to other public services, then you are treated like an immigrant labor. And so therefore you have to go back and really stay put in your inland provinces. And so the reason what this graph means is that when you move away from the seaboard here and you go inland down here, inland, this is inland, okay, the productivity of a factory worker goes way down. The productivity of a service worker does not go down. And so there's a big gap that China, even though they want factories to set up in the inland, they cannot always have the same productivity as those workers near the eastern seaboard. And that's the big challenge that China has, and that's why the government gives a lot of subsidies inland. And that's why you find that factories in Shenzhen, Shanghai, along the eastern, Zhejiang, Jiangsu, Fujian, all those provinces on the eastern seaboard, they always have immigrant labor. And that's why when China gave a lot of incentives to set up factories inland, they couldn't create a perfect balance. Like in USA, look, you got balance because your eastern seaboard here, you got east, and you got the western seaboard, you got eastern seaboard. China doesn't have that. So that's the challenge that China has to grapple with in its growth over time. So just, there's a bit of economics that's more like economic geography of the challenge that China has, because part of its land mass is mountainous and the other land mass is next to the sea. And in any country, it's always the areas near the sea that tend to be richer than the areas near the country. Okay. What does this mean? This shows you that China is supposed to be growing, hopefully growing like what Japan and Korea did in the 1950s, 70s, and the 70s to the 90s. Yes, China can go that way, and it might even go faster. But here's the problem. China's labor is as much or more expensive than Malaysia at the moment. It is cheaper now to employ labor in a factory in Malaysia than it is to employ labor in a Shenzhen factory in China. Wow, isn't that amazing? So, and much more expensive than India, Thailand, Indonesia. Vietnam is still down here. But remember, what did I show you earlier? All of these other countries do not have the infrastructure or the seaports that China has. So China has the labor, but they're getting old and they're cheap. So, and that's why the average monthly wages for Malaysia and China are about the same. And that was 5 years ago. So today, China's even more than Malaysia. But here's the challenge. Even when you set up a factory, even in Southeast Asia or China, the productivity of the average factory worker is still much lower than USA. So that's always a challenge there. But if you listen to my friend that works for VF Corp, he's one of the supply chain managers for their regional operations in Asia. And VF Corp, what does VF Corp make? VF, they make jeans. They're the largest manufacturer of jeans in the world. They ship about 150 million pairs of jeans a year. And they make the 5-pocket variety that is made in Mexico, very, very cheap. But when it comes to their large designs, their special designs that they want, that they think that's ready for the market for any particular season, they will actually send their design team to China to make. And I ask him, what is your biggest challenge? And he says, the biggest challenge for me is the cost of time. Let me make, and we'll come back to that later in this semester, the cost of time. Because when you make things in China for a US market, it costs you 6, 7, 8 weeks to ship from China to the US. But when you make the same batch in Mexico, you can ship out of the factory and be in the stores within a matter of a few days. And that's the cost of time. And that's the big multinationals are always weighing up. We have a China factory, but it's making something that's different from the Mexico factory. Or we have an India factory and that's making garments, but that's different from the factory we have in Turkey that is making garments, because the garments that we get made in Turkey, we can ship into EU within 2, 3, 4 days. But the garments that we make in India, it's going to take several weeks because we load them on the ships and then they go to Europe, you see. So multinationals, I want you to think about this notion of cost of time, because this is something that you may want to think about. You just cannot just say, oh, let's just put our factory in Bangladesh and make everything in Bangladesh. No, what the multinationals do, and this you learn this in week 10, 11 and 12, is our Bangladesh factory are making certain designs, but our Brazil factory are going to make other types of designs because we can ship from Brazil into US faster than we can ship from Bangladesh into US. And a lot of these decisions are made about, especially when we're talking about garments, it's all about the cost of time. So just keep that in mind. Productivity, the cost of time, these are issues that you need to think about. And that's my point about, I think India's at about 10, Vietnam's about 10, and a lot of these other countries, Malaysia is about 10, but China and Hong Kong now, I think, are closer to 170 in terms of port capacity of those. And then finally, I just want to let you know that just north of here, where I am in Hong Kong, we have the digital megacity. We have 2 people in our Zoom chat room from China, is that right? They're in China now, yes? Who's in China now? Anyone? No one. I think there's 1 or 2 of you in China. Is that? Okay. If you're in China, that's great. But I just want to let you know that Shenzhen now, the actual size of Shenzhen is actually larger than Hong Kong in terms of GDP. Okay? Population, GDP, it's just bigger. And it's growing faster, amazing. And if you can go across to Shenzhen and get electronics prototyped, manufactured, and shipped within 1 week. Things can be done very, very fast just across the border. So this is a mega city that at the moment the China government is focusing on. That's one infrastructure project. Next week we're going to talk about that. That's one big infrastructure project, and they call that the Greater Bay Area. So they keep that in mind. That's one big thing that's happening. Another big thing that's happening, and that's Shenzhen, is the Belt and Road, and that's why India is very important. That's why Southeast Asia is very important. That's why Southern Russia is very, very important. These are all linkages that are part of the One Belt, One Road that China is promoting. And the main way that they're promoting that is setting up infrastructure for the strengthening of supply chains in this route. So keep that in mind. These are big mega trends that are happening in this region. It's not just China. China is driving a lot of these ideas because they're a source of a lot of infrastructure with India, even Vietnam. I'll give you an example. How many of you have heard of Texong? Texong is a major garment manufacturer in China, and they've just set up this industrial park. Guess where it is? It's in Vietnam, in Hanoi, just at top, just out of Hanoi in Vietnam, top of Vietnam. And that's a picture. I took that picture at a industry conference 2.5 years ago. I can tell you today that that park is now operating. And what you've got is you've just got factories, you've got dormitories, you've just got tens of thousands of people working like a factory city. And that's not in China, that's in Vietnam. Okay, so you've got these mega projects being set up, and the One Belt, One Road is kind of trying to encourage things like this. And in Malaysia, you know, the China government wants the Malaysian government to set up and develop their port on the east coast of Malaysia. and it's very contentious, very political. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm just saying that, this is all under the guise of one belt, one road. So this is something that you need to be aware of, because it's going to affect how many countries in Southeast Asia and Asia are going to move ahead in the decade to come. All right, and finally, I just want to leave you with this idea of, okay, yes, if we move out of China, if we move into Asia, maybe there are different factors you need to take into consideration. For example, I talked to a German company that had a joint venture in Guangzhou, and I said, oh, what's your strategy for China now? Oh, we're now setting up a factory in Shanghai. Shanghai? How can you do that? Shanghai is 100% more expensive than Guangzhou to hire labor and have the factory. He said, sorry, but we just have to follow what our German head office tell us to do, because they fear that continuing to expand in Guangzhou will make their China operations susceptible to under-the-table money, foreign corrupt practices. And so they felt that it was safer, even though it was more expensive, to actually have their factory in Shanghai and not in Guangzhou. I have spoken to another CEO of a major company that makes the connections where you go into a different country and you connect your power adapter into the power plug, but you need a connector to fit the two. They moved out of China and they moved into Thailand. Why did you move to Thailand? 3 reasons. Number 1, under the table money. Number 2, protection of their IP. Number 3, for the labor costs. And so I saw that CEO 6 months later after he moved into Thailand. I said, how's it going? He said, oh, the Bangkok government just put up the labor by 60% overnight. And so what I tell these SMEs, large buyers, yes, we talk about moving out of China, moving into India, or moving to Bangladesh or Vietnam or whatever, but don't move for one factor alone. Don't just move for regulation. Don't just move for labor. Don't just move for some other factor. You need to have a combination of factors that really dictate your strategic move from one country to another. And hopefully in this course, you'll have much more appreciation of those factors in 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks time. But for now, you can actually watch my video where I talk about this in more detail in YouTube, and I talk about each of these areas of why we should move into China, why we should move out of China, etc. And there's lots of different examples here that we can go into if you have questions in weeks to come. So for now, I just want to let you with this summary and thinking about the macro shifts. Of course, this evening, we talked about COVID and its effect on the supply chain. And then I moved on to and focused a little bit more, gave you a little bit more detail of China. Yes, the big positive for China is the consumer. Yes, money, money, money. The consumer, 2023, the consumer is going to be there. The consumer is going to be bigger and better than any other consumer market in the world. But there's other factors you need to think about. Okay, the trade war has forced boardrooms around the world to think about, okay, if we're going to stay for the consumer, maybe we need to have a second factory in another country for shipping to USA, for shipping to Europe. And maybe we need to stay in China because of that consumer. We need to think about labor productivity like VF Corp does. We stay in Mexico because they have cheap labor that can make the 5-pocket variety jeans. But we stay in China because the labor in China, although is more expensive, that labour can pick up the new designs that we need to get made very, very quickly for a particular season that we need to be into the market. The other thing we need to think about is the volume. China has the infrastructure where all the other countries around Asia do not. China has 170 million about TFU capacity per year, whereas India, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand are all under 10 million TFUs per year. These are chokeholds if you are running a huge volume business. So these are factors that we need to think about from a macro point of view, because everyone's been talking about with COVID and 2020, the trade war. There's so much uncertainty. The election in 3 months' time in USA. Wow, just 3 months away. Wow. There's so much uncertainty. And if you were tomorrow summoned to give a presentation to boards of directors of a company, what would you tell them? That's my question to you. What would you tell the boards of directors? I want you to think about that, because yes, you can read the learning objectives at the beginning of this unit, but I think the ultimate learning objective is, what if you were asked to give a presentation to the board of directors tomorrow morning? What would you say to them about what should they do with our supply chain? What should we do? My objective for you is that you would be able to go at the end of this 10 weeks, 12 weeks, you would be able to go in front of the board of directors and give them a logical presentation about the risks that their industry are facing, the factors that they need to consider for their supply chain, and where their supply chain needs to be in 2 or 3 years' time. And I think if you can do that, I think this unit will be 100 times more valuable than what you think by just reading the learning objectives in the unit guide. So that's my wish for you for this unit. So I want to, questions. What do you think? Don't say anything. I'm going to give you another opportunity to have a quick 5-minute discussion and come back to me with some questions after that discussion. Are you ready? Jinbei Hala, that's in Chinese. I apologize, I don't know Bahasa Malay. I'll have to learn that one. Okay, let's, we're going to do this again. We're going to have breakout room, but this time it's a speed meeting, okay? It's a speed meeting, maybe 8 groups again, 5 minutes, and your big question from tonight or your big learning from tonight just to share, okay? Or anything you like when you come back from that, okay? Breakout rooms, I'm going to create, let me recreate. So that means you're going into a different room now. Recreate all rooms. Are you ready? Jinbei Hala. Are you ready? Okay. And we have 5 minutes only. Okay. So once you get in there, very, very quickly. Okay. What is the big idea you got from tonight? Oh, what is exciting for you about this unit? And what big question that you have for me? Okay. You can discuss any of those 3 things. Okay. So it's recreate. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Hi, Ginny.
Yes, yes, Professor.
Oh, Ginny. Okay. Oh, we've got 2 to join, but that's good. Okay. Actually, I think that last session I speeded up a little bit, but I just wanted to get to the point at the end to have a little bit more time for their breakout room. What do you think?
I think your explanation is quite clear though.
Okay.
It's not that fast. Like, I think they can get it.
And anyway, they watch the video, they can always pick it up. So it's and actually I think there's 1 or 2 other videos. Actually, my video in the Udemy course goes through this 3rd part a little bit slower, so they can understand it more. So I think that's better.
Yeah, I think that's better.
Okay, let's. All right. No, I think this is good. I just want to get them into the breakout, and we randomize it again so they meet a few other people and say a quick hello and all of that. Okay. So at 9:44 I will close, and then I'll come back. So it's 9:45. So let's think about what we need to do to finish up what we're doing. Okay, and let me write it on so we have a good closeout for tonight, and then we don't forget anything. And we'll probably go to about 10:05 or 10:10 anyway, so I don't mind doing that. I'm sure they won't mind. Let's have a look at what we need to close up. Number 1, get them to, when they come back, we spend just 5 minutes for them to make comment or question.
5 minutes, yeah.
Okay. All right, number 1. Okay. Number 2 is probably I could create let me think. I could create, say, say 4 breakout rooms, right? Maybe 7 breakout rooms where I manually create. So breakout room number 1 is field work, all right? Breakout number 2 is COVID, right?
Okay.
Breakout room number 3 is blockchain. Breakout number 4 is some other, what was the other one? Compliance. What's the other one? What are we doing here? Let's have a look. I need to stop sharing that, and I just come back to, here we go. Compliance, and then maybe factory visit video. Either that or the question, and I create that, and then they can go to that. Do you know what I mean? What do you think?
Yeah.
The other way is to set up a question like I did with the Google Doc to say which are you interested in, and then they indicate. Do you know what I mean?
I think for this case, Google Form is better.
Yeah, all right. Well, then we can do that for next week.
Yeah.
And so this week they can think about, let them get into the subject first.
Yes, agree.
All right, all right. And then number 3 is they have to do the feedback. Let me show you.
So So it's completely anonymous, right? That's what I saw.
It's anonymous, yes. Yep. Global supply chain man. Let me just show you. Ginny, is this sharing? No.
No, it's not.
It's all right. Sharing. Oh, okay. Did I say 9? Let me just close. Did I say 9:44? I'll close all room. Give them 60 seconds. All right. If you look at the bottom part, if we look at the assignment submission, then there's a magic form. So we do that at the end, okay?
Professor?
Hi. Yes.
Can I just check with you? Is there a lot of difference between last year July and this semester, in terms of the unit assessment?
You mean 2000? That's a very good question. So
yeah, 2019 and 2020.
Correct.
Because
no, there is not a lot of difference.
I see. Because other subjects different.
The other subjects are different, are they?
Yeah. So law are quite different actually. They changed the entire format. So I was wondering for this supply chain, is there much difference?
The only thing that's different is I've taken. This is a very good question. Is everyone back with us now?
I think so.
Almost, I think. Should be. 38.
Hello. Hi. All right. Everyone, good. Thank you. Look, very good question that was asked. How different is this from 2019?
19. Yeah.
All right. And this is great that we can go through this now. 2019, the feedback I got from students was that the case study that you had to present as a group during the semester was maybe a little bit too much. It was 20%, so I brought that down to 15%. Number 2 was, the quiz they were a little bit anxious about, so I dropped that from 20% down to 15%. And they had to do a request for quotation, but I didn't give any marks for that. So this year I thought, okay, I'll give 5 marks for doing that, which is and the purpose is to give you some early points so you can feel some confidence and momentum in going into your assessment. What else? And the final project has 5% more. And I think the big difference is that we spend, there's a little bit more change in the content in terms of now we're talking about COVID, we're talking about the trade more in much more detail than we did last year. Last year we didn't have COVID. Last year we didn't have PPE and the mask problem and those problems of the supply chain.
I see.
So I would, so the difference in content, I would say maybe there's about 10% difference at the most. It's not radically different. I tried to make it better, if anything. So I've taken out the worst 10% and I've put in 10% better stuff. got new factory videos, we've got new, but the content is largely the same. I think it's much better. So for example, next week, I'm talking about blockchain and the supply chain. So last year I didn't talk about that. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
But if you were to watch the lessons from last year, it would cover 90% of what we're covering this year. Okay, 90%. Okay. But this year might, yeah. For example, that last session I just did, I covered that in 30 minutes. I went very, very fast. But I think there's a video in Udemy where I go over that same area and I spend an hour going through all the different ways in which factories move inland China, out of north and south. And I spend more detail and I spend an hour doing that. So you can pick up into more detail. I think this is a very good question. More questions, please.
Can we know if we will be covering any other countries besides China? I mean, I know this is predominantly based on China, but will we be covering any other countries or compare with any other countries?
Mangels, absolutely. Okay, the chance for you to cover other countries, you can explore that in the major project. So for example, you can look at another country with respect to a particular supply chain and the challenges of the supply chain in that country. And so in effect, you're at 45% of your assessment is actually focusing on something other than China. I think even in the lecture I've given, the 2 hours today, I've actually brought in other country examples that I didn't bring in last year. So I bring in other countries to the extent that I have living witness of the challenges those countries are facing. So I'll do my best, but at the moment, what you'll find is I'll show 2 factory videos, but the point is not to make a point about, oh, this is China, but to actually make you aware of, okay, if you were going to source from A or B, what questions would you ask those factories? And those 2 factories could be in Vietnam, they could be in Thailand, they could be in another country, and you'd still be asking the same question. So I'll do my best not to make it too much about China. But the only reason why I like to give some China examples, it's only because I've seen it firsthand, and I've actually done client work firsthand. So I want to, I pride myself on giving you firsthand knowledge rather than regurgitating what I learned in a textbook. Yeah.
I guess when it comes to China, I mean, you can cover all bases as well.
Sorry, sir?
I guess when it comes to China, you can be able to cover all bases of supply chain as well.
I try my best to do that, yes. Okay. More questions, please.
The question that our group had was actually more of regarding the today's materials. So we were wondering, in terms of because one of the things that we mentioned was that the diversification into food and pharmaceuticals, right? So then we were just wondering whether or not what do you think, whether after the COVID, will people still be focusing so much on food and pharmaceuticals, or do you think it will change? Like in general, the whole system, because right now I feel like because of COVID-19, a lot of things have changed, but whether or not, do you think it will go back to how it used to be, or?
Okay, there will be factories that have changed to manufacturing PPE, and that will be their new business model for the next 10 years.
Mm.
Yes, there is plenty of room. Okay, number one, the market for the sustainable market for PPE for the next decade has basically doubled or tripled. Like even after post-COVID, that market is still going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to have masks as backup for the next decade. This, this is not like SARS that occurred in 2003, where we all had masks on, and then 18 months later, everyone forgot about it, and we no longer buy masks. I think this is going to be a new dawn, and it's going to change how people, it's going to change people's habits, and it's going to last for much longer, and therefore it's going to change the market for PPE. So
well,
I think
also the whole problem of waste will be a huge issue to combat as well, right? Because I feel like now with the disposable masks, there's been a lot of talk about how they are like not being disposed properly, and there's just masks everywhere for like in terms of environmental issues.
that is a great yeah, actually you could do a project on that, Sarah. These are some of the issues that I would like you to think about over the next week in terms of a project. I haven't personally, I haven't thought about that, and I'm thinking absolutely there's a lot of waste, because there's that special plastic textile material. It's non-woven mold material that goes into the mask, and that's not biodegradable.
Yeah, exactly.
And 1 ton of that material goes into, it's a big roll, it's 1 ton in weight, that goes into, and that makes 700,000 masks. And every day you've got 1 billion masks being disposed of around the world. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so that waste, I haven't thought about that. And if talking about waste, maybe let me put that on the list for thinking about waste, because now China and other countries, not just China, China is now declining the delivery of waste to its ports. It's already declined that 5 years ago, especially electronic waste. And now if you have electronic waste in another country, you cannot just ship it to China.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll do the same for masks. And so now what do you do with that waste? And so what EU is saying, they're creating laws now that if you sell masks in the EU, you're going to be responsible for the collection and disposal of that waste. That's what they're trying to do. That's not law yet, but these are things that governments are thinking about at the moment. So very, very good point about that. Yeah, e-waste, mask waste, PPE waste. Yeah. Other points that groups brought up, please.
You mentioned that in China they actually the smaller workshops actually they keep it small because they want to avoid the tax, right? Don't you think the government in China actually encourages those kind of practices? So they kind of want to spawn plenty of workshop in order to like maybe making the what's it called, the production cheaper. Like they actually like doing it on purpose.
Well, okay, all right, that's more of like a tax policy or a government policy. No, I don't think they have a deliberately, that's a very, very good point you make about that. They do not have a deliberate policy not to target small enterprises, but there's only so much that you can target in any country. The way in which they're getting around that is by making everyone connected through electronic payments. And once you have greater reach in terms of that connection, because everything's becoming digitalized, then it's going to be much more difficult for these small factories to avoid paying taxes. Especially if, okay, if once the small factories, once they have an export license, any revenue that they earn from export becomes visible to the government, and so then you can't avoid tax on that, but you can avoid tax on things that you sell domestically. Maybe it's sold to a department store that runs on cash, and less of them are running on cash now. So there's very little loophole for that to happen nowadays. That was up to 5 years ago, those factory examples. But very good question. On a macro level, because I did teach international tax, you might know about the Common Reporting Standard, and that's something that all the G20 are signatory to, even Malaysia's a signatory to, Vietnam, all of Southeast Asia, China. What does that mean? Is that you have to share profit revenue data of any company in your country with other governments around the world. So increasingly, that is forcing all of the developing world to become more digitalized and to actually broaden the taxation net on small and medium enterprises. Unfortunately.
So,
by the way, I'm happy to go to 10:10 here and a little bit longer. I just want you to, if you have any questions, it's no problem.
So,
yes.
Speaking of digitalization, a lot of companies are making use of big data, and I'm just wondering, how can it be applied to supply chain management?
Oh, very, very good question. I was listening to a podcast on that the other day. Actually, the person they interviewed a guy from SAP. Big data, okay, first of all, big data is relevant when you can run analytics and find out about what is going on, what is not working. You know, the ideal of big data is that you can run analytics and then you can tell which supply chain is more efficient, where your inventories are being optimized. You can tell where things are moving slowly, things like that. Big data can tell you this, but here's the big problem with big data, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that next week and the week after. That is, it depends on the quality of the data collection. So let me give you an example. I've got a friend that works in Quicksilver. Quicksilver is a major brand that sources from factories in Bangladesh, India, China, I think Indonesia. They sell all over the world their brand. They make apparel, surfing products. Anyway, so they go to this data consultant to set up these tablets to put in their factories in China. The consultant is called Pivot 88, and the job of Pivot 88 is to have the people in the factory to put in data about how their supply chain is operating and any problems of any assembly operation. So therefore, Quicksilver can look at their analytics, their big data, to find out where their different suppliers are in terms of quality control, their AQLs, their rejects. But the problem is that not everyone in the factory know how to put the data in to this digitalized process, or they're not putting it in at the end of each day, or they don't put in all the information. So big data is perfect for what we need to use it for, and that is to find out the optimization of different supply chains, or to find out which SKUs, that is stock keeping units in a particular retail chain, are moving fast and which units are moving slow. Big data depends on getting timely information from the data source and accurate information from the data source. Okay, and so I think the C, what does the C stand for? I forget now, I'll come back to you. But CAT, accurate, timing, on time. So data, it depends on that. Then you can do everything with that. Sorry for my long answer to your question.
Adding to this, I think with big data, you can, if you've heard of ABC FMR analysis, that is something you can do with big data for a supply chain. As you mentioned, like how much, let's say a product is being turned over, along with how much of the quantity is sold. So you can decide how much to produce for a particular market you're selling in as well.
Correct. So the big data has given you transparency of your downstream sales.
Yeah.
But the challenge for big data is to give you transparency of your upstream supply chain. And that hasn't been perfected yet. But the big multinationals are working on it. That's a very, very good question. And Dan, thank you for your contribution on that. Sorry, I think I'm spending too much time on answering. It's just gone past the hour. I just want, keep your questions, or actually, please don't hesitate to send me an email with other questions. But what I'd like you to do now is, if right now I'm sharing, let's have a look. Right now I'm sharing the Moodle site. Can you see that in front of you?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, okay, all right. So just bear with me, like we sort of had to cover a bit of administration as much as, then I also had to give you a bit of interesting content to make it interesting for you, so you don't give up on this unit by week 2. Okay, so if we have a look at assignment submission, can you click on this form here, Magic Form 2020 Student Feedback? If you click on that, I'm clicking on that now, and I've got 3 questions for you to answer. You don't have to say much, like, what is the big idea you learned today? Now, yeah, this is anonymous, so you don't have to put your name or anything like that in, but if you want to, you can. If you feel that you have some thoughts that you want to share and it helps with your participation, you can identify yourself, but it's not critical. The big idea, the main thing you learned today, the big question you have on your mind, teacher has enhanced my thinking ability. Maybe not, then don't put anything. Which part impressed you the most? Which part, that could be content, or maybe the fact that you had a group interaction, or maybe it's something else, okay? So could you take 5 minutes to fill that out? And then next week when we come in, I can, especially if you have questions on your mind, then we can help answer them. And then that's very important. I've actually created 2 required questions. That is the big idea and which part the most. The 2 middle questions are voluntary, but it's up to you. If you have a big question on your mind, happy to hear from you. You can answer all 4 of them if you want to. Okay, we're just getting warmed up. This is our first week. Okay, some of you are thinking, I'm a bit uncertain about the assessment. Okay, that will come a little bit clearer. Because we're going to be covering blockchain next week. We're covering China 2025 next week. We'll talk a little bit more about the group projects next week. So, and we'll get a little bit more visibility for you so you can think about how this assessment will work for you, especially if you want to do something on India or Vietnam or Malaysia or Bangladesh, you can do that. I think one of the best projects that were done last year, and I'm happy to share that with you next week, was on the factory production in India. And they did a great job. It was basically a field work. So the students' family ran the factory, and then they actually wrote a report on the factory about the operational detail and the challenges that they faced and their strategy for overcoming the challenges. One last thing that I'll draw your attention to is the, without giving you too much to do, it's not something to do, but it's more of a, let me just turn it off. Yeah, I set up a Google Hangout, so that means you can, like the chat room here, the Google Hangout can have a chat. So if you have a question that you just want to ask, then I can answer it very, very quickly in the chat room, and then everyone gets to see the answer to the question. So I find that very, very efficient. Why? Because the Google Hangout works very, very well on your smartphone. So the announcement I sent out in Moodle gave you an opportunity to identify the chat room. I'll send another announcement out to remind you about that. So, is there any final questions and how you felt things went for today? So, any final comments or questions? Okay. Do do all of you have evening classes for other units, or the afternoon classes instead?
More, I got 1 afternoon classes and 3 evening classes.
Wow, that's a big week. Wow, evening. Okay.
My Mondays and Fridays are still free, so I guess it's still fine. It's a long weekend.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, bang, bang, bang. Okay, all right. Well, my job is not to give you too much homework. My job is to give you a heads up on what to do before next week. So next week, the only thing I'm asking you to think about, you don't have to do much work on, is the following. I'll just share the screen and then we can go, and we're good to go. There's our, it's kind of homework. Did it plan? Think about, something to think, which industries are most likely to have a good case for reshoring. We talked about that today. And which industries, good case for, we talked about that today. So these are questions that we talked about today that you probably have an answer for already. And next week, we may look at some of these questions in your group. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'll be going through the blockchain innovation automation of supply chains in detail, but we'll break out into groups, and then you can actually talk about different challenges and questions that you have about that. Okay, and then also next week, I think it would be important to think about forming groups. So I'll just give you a heads up for next week. So your best preparation. Think about your topic for the major project. You don't have to decide by next week, but just have an idea. If you're going to do a field work, or you're going to work in a group that has a field work opportunity, then do that. That's great. I'll encourage you to do that. Number 2, join the Udemy course. That's free. Like, you don't have to join it, but it's free, so you might as well. People join, they have to pay $99 US, but just join it, and then it's there forever. And the YouTube, you can watch some of the videos in YouTube that can help you explain how the project report can be done. So there's some ideas, plenty of things to digest, and you can ask me questions if you have any problems. So any last thing, just send me an email or write in the chat room. I'll be here for the next 3 minutes. And just want to say a good night to everyone, and have a lovely week. Stay safe, and happy to help, especially if you've got any questions or if you're uncertain about any parts of the assessment. Happy to discuss with you further.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
10:18. We try and leave a bit earlier next time. Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
And Ginny, if you can stay on, that'll be great. Thank you.
Hello, Professor.
Hi, Ginny. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, just a minute. Myra, Ashley, any questions? How are you going?
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Is there anything?
No. It's okay.
But have a lovely week, and don't hesitate. Send an email if you have any questions. Happy to discuss.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I don't think she's there, I think.
Hi, Myra. I'll just stop the recording.